All right, Hadley, I have to tell you a story. Are you ready?
Yeah, I want to hear it.
So, I was talking with a client recently who explained to me that she had just gotten a PowerPoint from her 10-year-old niece of all of the gifts that she wants for the holidays. And
Oh
this
my
stuck
gosh,
out
that's
to
so
me.
good.
I was like, whoa, your 10-year-old knows how to make a PowerPoint presentation. That's incredible. But also, it felt like a little bit like a pause for me of this like culture behind like, I want these things, I'm going to make it easy on you to deliver me these things, here's a list. And that's actually an inspiration for this conversation on my side when you were talking about generosity in giving and why I was so excited about it. And so, do you, as you're listening to this conversation, resonate with, does your family give each other lists? Do you have a budget that you're supposed to meet? Do you feel like you're getting a little burned out on like the whole sort of corporatization of gift giving? And what can we do about that? What is another option? And so, welcome to the Holistic Inner Balance. And I am Dr. Nicole, and I'm joined
And
by.
I'm happy, healthy, Hadley.
And so, Hads, what do you think of that?
Oh, that's so interesting. So, like, on the one hand, I feel like that can be helpful, right? I think it's hilarious. It reminds me of the Charlie Brown Christmas movie. For anyone who's seen that, I watch it like every year with my family. And his little sister like is like reading off this list of things that she wants from Santa. And at the end, she's like, if this is too much for you, you can always send cash. Like tens and twenties are great. And he's like, tens and twenties. This is from like the 50s, right? So he's
Yeah.
like, tens and twenties. Like everyone is so, consumerism, all of that.
Yeah.
My own doggone commercial. Like it's it's so funny.
Which, by the way, if you like look at that, like Snoopy is like eating a stack of human-sized femurs. Like,
Yeah, he is. You're right. Oh my
it's so
gosh.
weird.
It's so fun that those movies are so good and they're still so timely. Like if you watch them, you're like, oh my gosh, like Lucy's like pretending to be like a psychotherapist. Like it's, wow, this was ahead of its time. But
Totally.
but anyway, so we're going to talk today about how to give in a way that actually doesn't deplete us and instead actually gives us more life. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, or for the past like 5 years, honestly, because I have seen, so there's like two sides of this, and we're going to bring the nuance because that's what we do. So, like, on the one side, there are so many things that are saying that we, in order to feel happier in our lives, giving is the way to do that. When we are generous, we actually become happier. There are many, many, many studies to show that this is true. Like there was one study that showed that that participants were asked to tell the researchers all of the things that they think would make them happier, and then the researchers kind of like made a lot of that stuff happen. Like, oh, I would be a lot happier if I like got more sleep, or I would be a lot happier if I could go on this vacation, or I'd be a lot happier if I got this, whatever. They saw no change, and then they used the same people came back the next week, and I think they gave them money, and they were like, go give this to someone who you want to give it to, and that actually made a difference in their happiness levels. And whereas the self-care stuff, the stuff that was like self-care, wasn't actually bringing them happiness. But I also am seeing all over the place that people are burned out by giving too, because they're like, I'm over giving. I'm doing all of this stuff for all of these people, and I have no time for myself. And I'm like, how can these two things be true? So something that I've just been like marinating in for the past like 5 years, since I started my business, 5.5 years, I guess, is how do we like rectify this? How do we actually bring these two things together? Can they both be true? And so we really wanted to talk about this with you today. It's something that I'm finally fleshing out, and I'm finally like trying to kind of create a philosophy on this. And Dr. Cain has a ton of really great things to add to this too, like this sense of how do we give from a sense of overflowing generosity without feeling burnt out. So the thing that I want to say here is that I actually don't know that overgiving is a thing. So that's like kind of my bold statement here is overgiving really what it is? Or is it actually giving out of alignment from how we actually want to give, how it actually feels like it gives us more life? So can we give generously from a state of like overflowing generosity rather than from this place of feeling like we are obligated, that we have to, that we should, that like, I have to do this for this person because they did something for me, or I have to do this for this person because that's how our relationship is, or I need them to like me, or whatever it is. And rather, can we come from a place of, I just want to give this because it lights me up. It gives me more energy. And then that's what that study I think is talking about, where when we do that, then we don't need all of the I have to go take care of myself and then I can start giving again, and then I have to go take care of myself and then I start giving again, which self-care is important, but giving in a way that actually gives us more energy makes it so that we don't have to like go like repair ourselves after the fact as often.
Yes. And I'm thinking about this in the imagery of spoons, which is funny because you guys, Hadley bent a spoon into like 3 bends recently, just with her sheer mind willpower. It was
Maybe we should do a
amazing.
podcast on that at some
I
point.
think we need
I think
to
we need
because
to.
you blew my mind. So maybe that's why I'm like still on the spoons, even after like 2 hours of talking to you. And I'm still on the spoon. But spoons can be representations of bandwidth that we have or resources that we have, whether it's financial, like that girl who had the PowerPoint, or, like 10s and 20s from the Charlie Brown, or it could be time, or it could be energy, or it could be intellectual property. It could be really anything, but the spoon represents your bandwidth for giving. And when you give, you release a spoon and you hand that energy bite to somebody else. And so the paradox that you've just presented us with, Hadley, is that we get spoons by giving, but we have to have spoons to give so that we can get spoons to give, to get spoons to give, right?
Yes. Oh, it's so good. It's like spoon theory for
Spoon
chronic
theory.
disease. This is a thing. This is a thing. Yeah.
Wait, if spoon theory is a thing, you're not just inventing that right now?
No, it's a spoon theory is a thing for like chronic disease management. It's thinking about how they're always people who have a chronic illness have to think about their energy in terms of spoons. So it's really weird that you don't know that, but that it was spoons that you came up with. That's really wild.
Girl, sometimes my brain is like, I know things that I don't know that I know that I don't know that I also
Right.
know. Yeah.
Totally.
So that's interesting. So spoon theory is about using spoons as a unit of energy. And so these individuals have these specific limitations of energy units that they have to then figure out where I'm going to spread it out. But what your research that you were just describing is saying, in order to attain more of that spoon energy, you give. But the nuance that you were just introducing at the beginning of the conversation is that there's different ways of spending our energy, and that some ways of spending our energy put us in a deficit, and other ways of spending our energy can actually put us in an abundance, right?
Exactly. Yes. And I think that this is something that is like people aren't really thinking about. We often think that energy is like our energy like just gets depleted throughout the day, and we only have so much energy, but really there are things that we do that actually bring us more energy, and one of those things can be giving.
I love that. I'm thinking about the old story called Stone Soup. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do, from when I was like in kindergarten. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember it and can't represent it adequately, but I'm going to try. And Because I think this is important as we're really allowing radical acknowledgement of where we are as a country economically,
Mhm.
is that when I see a video heading or an article heading and it's like all about redefining generosity, and then I think about all of the people that are out there, which is the majority of people who are like, I don't have enough spoons to meet my needs today, let alone redefining generosity. And so Stone Soup is, I feel like, a really interesting portrayal of that, where you have a bunch of people who arguably start with nothing and then they end up with this amazing soup. And so the first person, I think they have a fire and a pan,
Mhm.
and then they have a stone that they add in there, and then somebody else comes along and they have like something small that they can add to it, and then
Like
they're
a carrot top or
like
something.
a
Yeah.
carrot top. And so it's like as more people come together and they contribute to this communal thing, there's enough soup for them all to be well fed.
Mm.
And
So
it's
good.
it's so good. And I think about what can we in this modern era learn from that lesson, where if I'd have walked by and I would have held on to my carrot top, I would have been hungry.
Yeah.
But in this magical fiction story, I wasn't hungry. I had community and I was nourished and fed. And of course, it's fictionalized, but I think that there's really something to it, especially when we think about that energetic currency. So, can you tell us a little more about that energetic currency that can come from the different types of giving?
Yes, totally. So I was recently doing a somatic experiencing practice with my clients, and like slash journaling session. And I was asking them to kind of come up with, how it- at the current time of this recording, we're in December. And so I was having them identify, okay, so things that you want to experience during the holiday season or throughout the rest of the year, and really like hone in on what you actually want without like obligations, without, all of the shoulds. What would your experience look like that you would want to have? Um, and how would you want to give during this season? What would actually make you feel so excited to give to someone? Whether it's gifts or whether it's time or whether it's like volunteering somewhere or whether it's making something, like what would feel, if you had all the time and energy in the world, what would feel so exciting to you and would make you feel so lit up? And one of my clients was like, I realized that I don't give that generously in that way. But, instead of feeling bad about that, because that would be a lot of times where we go is like, oh my gosh, I'm not as generous as I wish that I were, which was me like my whole life. um, I always wanted to be more generous than I was, and I always felt like I wasn't a generous person. And she was like, but I realized that it's because I am like, she didn't say this, but basically leaking energy to all of these other areas where I feel obligated to give, because we were talking about giving from obligation versus giving from overflow. And so the reason she wasn't giving from overflow was because she was leaking all of this energy on all of the things that are shoulds, that are things that she feels like she has to do. And so a lot of times we hear be more generous if you want to be happier, or like be more generous to be a better person, right? Like that's a classic one. Especially if you're in like religious communities and stuff. And really, it's not that you're a bad person. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're like probably more of the kind of person who tends to like give like quote unquote overgive, because there's so many things that you want to be doing for other people. Not that you're just like, oh, I don't care about anyone else. Like if you're listening to this podcast, that's probably not you. So how can we start to give in a way that actually, instead of, and it's, so how can we say no to all of the things that we're doing that is leaking our energy, so that we then can become this like overflowing generosity person? And that's what I've experienced even in the last year. I would say I feel like I have kind of plugged up a lot of those leaks where I'm not doing as much of the shoulds, and I'm still not perfect at this by any means. I'm still working on, different things and identifying where those leaks are coming from. But it's giving me so much more capacity to have that overflowing generosity. And so it is, so the self-care piece is really just like the plugging up of the energy leaks of where you're giving in places that don't feel in alignment. And it's going to be different for everyone. Some people might really like to go over to someone's house and cook for them. So, but you might not, like, so you don't have to do that if that's not what you love to do. Some people might love to like make things for other people and like be like, all Pinteresty and stuff. And you might not. And so you don't have to do that. And you can say no to things. We just talked about in our holiday podcast episode about you can say no to going home to your family for the holidays. Gasp. Like that is a possibility for you. And then like, you're going to have so much more bandwidth. If you allow yourself to then give generously after that, then it's like, you're just going to have so much capacity to give to wherever it is you actually want to. And that makes you fill it up.
So how do you find energy leaks?
Oh, I like that question. Basically, anytime you feel like there's like an icky sticky, that's what I call it, like an icky stickiness.
Yes.
Where you're like, I don't feel excited about this. I feel like there's just like in the kind of just like the energy between you and that other person, or you in the event, or you in the like situation that's going on. That's an opportunity for us to really be like, okay, what's going on here? And it's not to say that you have to like be like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this because these are energy leaks, or like I'm cutting this person out of my life because it's an energy leak. It might just be there needs to be just like a little tweak that needs to happen that moves you into a new dynamic, a new relationship dynamic, or a new way that you show up, or asking someone else to show up in a different way. There might be just like little teeny tiny tweaks, or there might be really big things that need to happen. But how you actually identify it is just noticing where is that icky stickiness.
Yeah. And that might involve like scanning your body, is like,
Yes.
Imagine yourself doing the thing or buying the thing or whatever it is that's the energy expenditure. And then saying, okay, if I notice this, how do I feel? Do I feel more energized, or do I feel a little bit excited? Or is there like a place in my body where there's that kind of stickiness, the icky sticky you said? And what would be really interesting is to allow that icky sticky to inform you about what unmet needs you might have. Because then you can take it deeper than like, oh, wow, well, maybe I shouldn't do this thing. And you can take it deeper than just putting up a boundary or drawing a line or saying no. You could actually go to that origin of that thought, that emotion, or that sensation, and say, okay, what is this rooted in? So it may be that I want to go out with a friend and I love this friend and I love spending time with that friend, but I just feel dread going out. And it's probably not that it's a currency exchange that would be detrimental or deleterious, but rather it's bringing up something else that may be an unmet need. So maybe I need more rest. Maybe not less of that time with that person or to give to that person, but I need to schedule in more time to rest. Or maybe I have a person in my past who took advantage of me expending energy and they had the same haircut. Like it could be anything. And so allowing that icky sticky to inform you about, is there anything that could be rooted in? Because all of these opportunities provide us the space to do even deeper healing.
Yes. And it doesn't need to be, I like how you gave the example of like, maybe you're like, oh, I just want to cancel my plans with this friend because I feel depleted or whatever. That could be a tweak too. It could be like, well, I'm feeling the icky stickiness, but I know that I really like enjoy spending time with this person. So it's not necessarily like the person or the relationship dynamic, but maybe it's like you were planning on going to grab coffee. And the icky stickiness for you is feeling like, I don't want to be around a bunch of people right now because I don't want to like, just be like overstimulated or whatever it might be. Or maybe it's like, I don't feel like going for a drink because I don't like to drink and it doesn't make me feel good, or, whatever it might be. And so maybe the tweak is we do something else, or they come over to my house, or I come over to their house, or we go for a walk, or something that actually makes you feel like now it feels like it would be a great experience. Now it feels like I would really want to do that. So it's a good, like, small example.
I love that example. And I was thinking about gifts in that I don't actually love giving Christmas gifts, but I love giving gifts for randomness. And so like the other day,
Same.
I bought
Yes.
Ashley a necklace. There's this like necklace that our friend Taylor at the office has, and we all love it. So we all keep getting the same necklace and copycatting her.
I
And
love
so
that.
I was like, thanks, Taylor. And she's so great. And she's like so generous about it. She's like, fine. And so I bought this necklace for Ashley because she expressed that she liked it. And so I gave it to her and she's like, oh, you could have saved this for Christmas. And I was like, but it's fun giving it to you and it's not expected. And I don't have to, I'm not obligated to. And
That's totally how I feel.
I don't want to energetically say that I feel like obligated because I celebrate getting them gifts. It's just different when it's maybe expected, but she doesn't expect it. So I'm trying to like figure out like how I want to frame that. And so I hope that you guys who are listening are hearing me convey that I especially find it energizing and puts more carrot tops in my soup when I get to give randomly.
Yes,
And
totally.
so I'm going to leave it at that.
Yes, no, I love that. That's actually, Todd and I are the same way. Like when we
You
hear
are.
someone say that they love something, we will be like, "Oh, did you hear that? Like we got to go, like just go order it right now and then we'll give it
Oh,
to them." Because it's so
yeah.
fun, just like that, like that surprise, that spontaneity, and that feels so energizing for us. Whereas, with Christmas gifts, it's also the sheer amount too, where you're like, "Oh my God, I have to get something," like, and it has to, and I always want it to be like, special. Like I want it to not just be like random crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
um but I also do, like, for like holidays, sometimes I will do things that are more like, making like Christmas cookies, or making things that are like consumables for a bunch of different people. And then, I can do those specialized gifts like throughout the year, if that makes sense.
It does. And the way that people feel is really different. And I'm thinking about a patient that I had once where her mother was the person who's expected to prepare all the meals for their family. And
Mm,
you and I talked about this in another podcast episode about like how a certain person who has the expectation of preparing all the meals and how if that's not their love language or if that's not how they feel in abundance and spoons given to them, is that can create a lot of distress or even resentment. And so this patient of mine has been really working on when she sits down to meals is that she has this like grief in her belly. She feels guilty, she feels unworthy. And so we were processing through that, what it was like for her to sit down and have meals growing up. And her mom was really stressed out whenever cooking and felt like angry and resentful. And so when she would receive this meal, she felt shame and like a burden and felt guilty. And
mm.
so it's like interesting as you're talking about like I want to make these cookies, it's so fun, it energizes me. Like I guarantee you that the person who's eating those cookies is going to have a different experience eating those cookies versus if you were like I have to make these flipping cookies because they expect me to do it every year and I'm so annoyed and I'm going to slap them together and they better darn well like them. The
Right.
experience of receiving is impacted by your experience in the giving.
Exactly. Yes. And then you're also able to give more of yourself too. And then you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so energized by this. Now I want to go do this thing to give to someone. Now I want to go do this." And it creates like a momentum. And then you just become a generous person. And then it's just like life gets a lot more sparkly, which we also have talked about, sparkly conversations and stuff. And it just feels yeah, a lot more fulfilling. And no, I also want to mention, like, people might be like, well, I have so much going on, I can't give that much. Like I have too many things. So I want to also mention that like you got to plug up those leaks. Like you really got to like, you need to or you get to really, you get to plug up those leaks if if you want to do this work, is you get to plug up those leaks that are those icky sticky things. Because I know that a lot of times people are like, well, I overgive, but if you're giving from that place of obligation, that's where the overgiving feels like it's coming from. But yeah, it's really like you're giving out of alignment. You're not actually feeling as lit up as you could feel from giving in other scenarios.
Can I give a practical example of how to assess this and do it?
Yes, please.
So there's this book, it's called Essentialism, written by Greg McNone. And I think you and
McEwen,
I
yeah.
McEwen. I've
Yeah,
said his
yeah.
name wrong for like 10 years. Oh my goodness. I even listened to it on
It's
Audible,
like
so I would have heard him
Ayurveda.
say it.
Word
Ayurveda, right?
Yeah.
Ayurveda. So that's so funny. Wait, Kewen?
McEwen.
McEwen?
Yeah.
Oh,
Greg
okay. I'm gonna
McEwen.
mispronounce that again. Just keep correcting me. Um, so he talks about how our culture is often doers of all and masters of none. And
Yes.
we often say yes to all these things, and they are energy leaks. And what he teaches is you draw a triangle, kind of like a pyramid shaped. And then at the base of the triangle, you list all of the things that you're doing. And so in this scenario, maybe all of the ways that you're giving or expending
Mm.
energy, all of the yeses that you're outputting. And then at the top of the triangle, at the point, is you write down what your main mission is, or that thing that fills your cup, or where you feel the most important or valuable, or like you can contribute, whatever it is, that unicorn star at the top. And then you start to look at what things you're saying yes to are pointing you towards that, and what things you're saying yes to are not. And
Yeah.
so that's the first step, is so you like get really clear on what you're doing. You get really clear on where you want to go. And then in a perfect world, you would plug up all those gaps, get rid of all of the yeses that aren't getting you there, and then you would be like rocking and rolling. However, I understand that that's not reality, but maybe you can start by plugging some of those up, or delegating them, or getting rid
Yes.
of them. And so starting somewhere can make a little shift can make a big difference. And the fruit of that, what we're describing here, is that you're going to have more of that overflowing generosity because you're going to have more spoons, right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and really it comes down to you feeling like lit up by the things that you're saying yes to. And that's going to look a little bit different for everyone, but like we've talked about in the past, like basically it's like good feeling sensations in your body. So you can, like, if you're asking yourself like, should I do this thing, or should I do this other thing, or should I not do this, should I do this, like just tapping into your body and saying like, does this make me feel more alive to think about doing this? Does it make me feel excited? And bringing in some details there too, because sometimes people are like, well, I'm like going back and forth. It feels good, but then it doesn't feel good. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just like the timing. Maybe it's not right. And maybe it's a not right now kind of situation where it'll feel good to do, but like maybe sometime in the future, or it'll feel good to do, but maybe there's like a slight tweak. So it would feel really good. So we gave the example before of my mom who had us all for Thanksgiving. She had us all make a different dish, and she wasn't in charge of it at all. She was like, you have to figure out what timing it's going to be like. And and funnily, all of our Thanksgiving food was cold, but it was fine. We just put it in the microwave when we put it on our plates. It was great. And so you can tweak it. So like my mom wanted to have everyone for Thanksgiving. That felt really good to her, but she didn't want to be in charge of it all. That didn't feel really good to her. So you can make these little tweaks too, so that it actually becomes something that you actually do want to do, and that it feels like this, like this energy, like this zing of energy rather than a depletion of energy.
I really love that. Yeah, your mom is so awesome. S-
She is.
So, in the last couple of minutes that we have together, is I talked about like my favorite way of identifying energy leaks, referring to the book of Greg McKeown.
McEwen.
So, Greg, referring to Mr. Greg, do you have an additional strategy that you use when you're starting to feel out of bandwidth and like feeling that icky sticky?
I journal so much.
Yeah.
Like it's like my lifeline
Yeah.
is like because a lot of times I don't even know what I'm feeling and thinking and all of that kind of thing. And so that's really the tool that I use that helps me really I'm yeah, getting it out of my mind and onto paper helps me have breakthroughs all the time of like, oh, this is why this is feeling like that icky stickiness, or oh, this is why. And so now I get to choose to change this. And, even writing down like, how might this be different? How might this scenario be different? And not even coming up with a solution right away, but writing that question down and like giving it to my subconscious mind to just like mull over. Like the answer usually will come to me like throughout the rest of the day or the week or whatever. So journaling for me is huge. Just like kind of like stream of consciousness. I'm feeling this way about this situation. Why is that? I don't understand why that is, and just kind of journaling it all out. Um I did want to also touch on the fact that you mentioned that sometimes this needs to be a thing that we do, that we, don't do anymore. Sometimes it needs to be something that we delegate. And I want to also mention that, so a lot of times we think like delegation, okay, delegation is me being in charge of the thing, but giving tasks to different people. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. Delegation instead can be, I don't even want to have to think about this at all. Can you be in charge of this completely? Right. So
Yes.
like the Thanksgiving thing in the past, my mom has delegated, like she has done, okay, you be in charge of this, you be in charge of this, but she was like orchestrating the whole thing the whole time, where because she was in charge of it. So instead, she said, you're in charge of this now. You're in charge of this. You have to figure out like the time that we're eating dinner is at this time. It's all got to be ready by then. Cool. So this is something that we can do, especially if we have like a lot of like, we're taking on too much of the mental load at work
Mhm.
or at home in our families, where we are in charge of all of it. This is the classic example is like a like hetero couple that's like husband and wife, and the wife is like constantly thinking of all the things that have to be done around the house, and the husband is more than willing to help, and they say, just tell me what to do, like I want to help, but the mental load is all on the wife to figure out what there even is that needs to be done. So in that kind of situation, it would be helpful to do something where it's like, okay, I am in charge of grocery shopping, or you are in charge of picking up the kids from school, or I am in charge of the lawn work, and the other person doesn't have to think about lawn stuff at all ever, or I'm in charge of laundry, the other person doesn't think about laundry at all ever. And so splitting things up that way so that we can, so because sometimes the energy leaks come from the fact that we're thinking about the things that we have to delegate out, and so I don't want that to become a trap for people.
I really appreciate that. That's a very valuable insight and I'm thinking about all of the things that I was just talking with Haley about today is like what is making you feel drained and what is really energizing and what can we delegate out and have someone else do? And I think adding to that conversation would be really valuable and asking her like, what do you not even want to think about?
Right.
In terms
Yes,
of like giving
exactly.
someone else ownership of that and like knowing that they've got it because I think that what you're pointing out is that there is like the actual load of activities, like building the house, but there's also like the architecture piece of like figuring out how it all goes together and that can be very draining too. So thank you for bringing that that in. That's really
So
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so needed. Like, oh my gosh. And so then that gives you more bandwidth to be able to be the generous, like excited, enthusiastic person that you want to be in your life.
Yeah.
So it's huge. It matters so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
This has
also
been
the other
so
thing is that like
good.
the individualistic society that we live in is like we should be able to do all of these things on our own. I also want to point out that like asking for help with these things, when you become the like generous, overflowing generosity like person, people want to do stuff for you. Like
Yeah.
it's not like people are like resentful of you asking for things, right? Like
Yes.
so so like asking for the things that you aren't as good at or that you don't like to do and asking someone else for help with that becomes a lot easier when you have that overflowing generosity kind of like coming from you. um and it's so helpful, like so it's so helpful to be able to ask for those things, and it's really helpful to like to well, okay, I also want to say that you don't have to, you can pay someone. This is something too that a lot of people I think kind of get tripped up on, of like I should be able to do it myself. I shouldn't pay someone to do something that I can do myself. Even sometimes we also think that things cost more than they do. I remember the first time I heard of like a personal assistant, and I was like, oh my gosh, when I'm like a million gajillionaire, then I'll be able to hire a personal assistant, right? But no, like you could like I actually did some of this work when I was first starting my business. When I lived in Seattle, I nannied for this family, and they had the kids only half the time because the other half the time they went to their dad's house. And so the weeks that the kids weren't there, I would just run errands for the family. And like this is a thing, like you can get someone to do this without spending like exorbitant amounts of money. If you want to just have someone like run errands for you, like you can get creative on these kinds of things too. And you can pay people. And the other thing that I'll say is that, like I mentioned, we think that, oh, I don't want to put this off on someone else because it's like the sucky thing. Like no one likes to do this. If you think that if you hate doing something, someone else, like everyone else must hate doing that thing too. But that's not true. Like one of my clients was talking about how she hates going through the fridge and like getting rid of stuff that, has gone bad or whatever. And I'm like, I love doing that kind of thing. Like I like doing that. Like I love the organization. And so it's not that you're like putting off the bad stuff on other people so that you can like only focus on the good stuff. It's that you're just putting off the things that aren't part of your like zone of genius, and you're giving it to someone else who's willing to take that on. Maybe it's their zone of genius, or maybe they just want to do it for whatever reason. And so I want you to like get your mind out of that space too.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, personal assistants are the
Hmm.
best. And they're allowing you to stay in your zone of genius so they can do their zone of genius, and then more gets done. And then, thinking about like cost, like if my hourly expenses require that I bring in X dollars, and I can contract some of that out so I can make more X dollars, like that just
Right.
seems financially practical. So I really, really like that.
Totally. And sometimes it also helps to save money in other areas too. So
Mhm.
yeah, like exploring a little bit of that too. Cause yeah, I think we're so unwilling to, if it costs money, we are so unwilling to hire it out. But sometimes it is a lot cheaper than we think it's going to be. And it's going to help us actually make more money or save more money as well.
That's so beautiful. So I learned about spoons, and I learned about giving generously versus giving out of obligation. We talked about energy leaks. We talked about the essentialism pyramid. We talked about burnout today. We talked about soup, and we
Yes, stone soup.
talked about alignment. And I felt like this was really good. So, what kinds of questions do y'all have? How do you feel like you get spoons? How do you fill your cup while being generous? I would love to hear more about that.
Yes. tag us, if you want to share this episode on like your Instagram and tag us. We love to repost and everything, and we love to hear from you. So, and if you have anyone who would benefit from this that you want to just like directly share with them, that would be amazing as well. We appreciate you so much. I just like I love getting messages from you guys and hearing about how the podcast is helping you in your own life. And we love you guys. It's like, oh, this podcast is like one of my favorite things to do in my life. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to help you with these different things. And if there's anything that you really want to learn about next, please let us know. Please reach out, or you can leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us. And you could even ask your question in there as well, like if you want us to talk about something in future episodes.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Much love, everyone.
See you later.